The great Billy Cobham. What impresses me so much, Billy, in all the years that I have known you is that I want to go back to the beginning. Where did it begin? What started with you for how you entered into having this desire to be a musician, and where was music your first step?
Oh boy. I have this vision of me. It had to be pre 3 years old. So I could be involuntarily lying because I'm not sure. But I come from a part of the world called Panama. And there used to be a little town called Gatun. It's still kind of there, but it's not there as it was. And we lived by the water. And what I remember is a lot of clanking and clanking and clanking and beating and thumping by two individuals whom I never met because I never had a chance to. By the time I left Panama, they were much older than me, and they've since long time passed away. Two cousins, one called, I can't even remember their names now, Clinton and somebody else. Anyway, what they did was they made steel pan, and they made congas and timbales. And you hear this stuff around the house all the time, you know, even though it may sound like an ugly duckling in tone. Eventually, you start to get these grooves, and it's invasive and it stays with you. Okay, so that's the first part. So here I am, pre 3 years old, 3.5 years old, 1947, and somebody got in my family, probably my father, got the bright idea to leave town, leave the whole country behind to try to do better elsewhere, which was the United States in New York. We moved to Bed-Stuy, Chauncey Street between Lewis and Stuyvesant, across the street from Robert Fulton Park. All of that stuff still exists, including the place where I lived. And to this day, 89 Chauncey Street. And I remember 5 years old, 6 years old, there's well, you can call it a gazebo, but an enclosed area made of cement at the eastern part of Robert Fulton Park. It's enclosed every Saturday that it wasn't raining, even in the wintertime. There was a conjunto. There was a whole group of players playing congas, and it was a Latin American community. And they were just making kind of musical offerings through drums, communicating with everybody back home. What was really special about my community is that everyone in that community, there was a small store, or it was just like it is today in Panama. You could buy things that you could not get anywhere else, just within a 5-block radius. Interesting. It was amazing. Some of the hottest pepper. I would smell it and almost pass out. Forget trying to eat it at that age. But the music was also caliente. It was really hot. Always, and this would start 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. In the summertime, as I remember, sometimes and run until 12, nonstop.
And it would start where? Where the music was happening in the streets, or just?
No, it was just in that one little gazebo.
Interesting.
It was huge. It's huge. It's still there today. Okay. I made a film called Sonic Mirror, which deals with music and autism. And there's a whole scene with me in there. I had friends that were involved in we would all come together, and I was always the runt, so I was a little guy, and trying to own up to everybody else. So they'd either give me everything I got was all of the stuff that no one else wanted, normal. And so one of the things was to play, if we played stickball or so, they put me someplace where I wouldn't get in the way, you know, and I'd have to work it out myself. If I wanted to stay in, I had to do well, okay? When it came to, you know how kids are, they go to asking, what are you gonna do, you know, when you grow up? What are you gonna do? You know, one of the kids would say, oh, I'm gonna be a doctor, the other one. And so they'd ask me, and say, well, Billy, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna play music. And he said, you can't play music. I said, sure, what kind of music are you gonna play? I'm gonna play drums. you don't have any drums? I said, yeah, but I can play on that car fender over there. And he said, yeah, show me. So they all stand around and I play on the car fender. It would sound, something like, and they couldn't even do that. So they go, wow, man, Billy's he's gonna be a drummer. Wow. Now I feel like George Carlin. Anyway, next thing you know, I started to believe it myself. And rest is history. Here we are.
So, when you think about it, it's pretty powerful. Was anybody else in your family a musician?
Yes. Aside from the cousins, my grandmother played guitar. Wow. Actually, tres, which is a kind of guitar, but strung, kind of interesting. And my mom sang. My father was a piano player, and he was gifted. He had an older brother. My Uncle Edwin had a very strong way of teaching, very, very organic way of saying, okay, you do it like so, you do it like so. And he would play, and my father, who had this knack for numbers because my grandmother was she was more the person who ran the family than my grandfather, who was blind. So she did the numbers thing. My dad learned from her. It was like anything. He could go there were days where you go to the grocery store and you just go checking just to make sure that we were paying the right amount of money. And he would have the price, the figure before the cash register. It was amazing how gifted he was. But it also told on my head, too, because I didn't have that. So when he got to me, he was like, what, idiot, you can't do this? On the other hand, what he also could do, which is a very interesting tie-in of the mathematics to the music, is that he could go and he could just, because of his brother, listening to him and sitting there, more listening and kind of than anything else. He never read a note. He could play in any key without knowing what key that was, number one. Also, number two, if you came to him and said, do you know My Funny Valentine as a kind of a trick, because he played a lot of cocktail lounge stuff, pianist by himself. You go, why don't you sing it, and let me see if I can follow you with it. I kind of have an idea. Whoever it was would start to sing, and he would phrase and play the piano to suit that particular individual.
Yeah, cool.
In real time.
That's huge ears.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
all that was going on inside the computer here. And I used to go, how? I mean, it made the person sound like Nat Cole or somebody, and you're going, hello? As soon as my dad finished, you went, no, this guy is about to fall over now. I mean, no chance. Yeah. But for that one period, and that's how my dad would earn some extra money for us at home. And it was all because he just was able to not just know the tune or play the tune. Sometimes he didn't know the tune at all. He was just following the person where it was going, and assuming that this is what was going to happen. He was using music in that way as a form that was sixth sense, man, that was beyond understanding.
Well, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, because I've seen you play with bands where there was no rehearsal and you went up there and played, and you did much of the same thing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
So when did the drum set come in? How did the drum set start to get into the picture?
Well, when my mother got upset over the fact that I kept denting all of the biggest pieces of kitchenware that she had in pots with her best spoons, so she said, we have to get this boy something to play on other than my pots and pans. Literally. To my father, he says, well, I don't know if we can afford it. She says, well, down in the 5 and 10 cent shop, I saw a drum set. And I'm going, wow. So for $2, they went and they brought this drum set up for Christmas. And $2 went as far as maybe 30 minutes after Christmas time. Everything was gone, man, And I was like, I'm going to play the drums.
Thank you.
Okay? So what happened next was that they started to move me into things. There's one guy really quickly that I want to attribute to this. After I left New York City, we moved out to Queens. I met a very, very special guy. His name is Keith Copeland. And I don't know if you guys know Keith Copeland. He's a great, great musician. But his father was a good friend of my dad's.
Now, he lived where, Keith?
Linden Boulevard, Shimer Junior High School. You remember?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Inwood Street?
Yeah.
Okay. Man, that was stomping grounds for us.
Yeah.
Keith, let's see, Ronnie Bedford, great drummer, was teaching Keith.
Oh, is that
because there was a big band called the Johnny Richards Jazz Orchestra, big band. And it was like the same as like Stan Kenton or Soda Finnegan back in those days. And Ronnie Bedford was off the hook. I mean, he was just a great studio player, and he knew how to channel Keith's ideas. And Keith had like, what, a Gretsch set? It was the first Gretsch set I ever saw in my life that wasn't in a magazine.
Wow.
And it was a red sparkle set, and I couldn't afford to take lessons, but Keith said, man, come on, man. You know, I'll take the lesson. You just watch and listen to Ronnie. You know, I'll ask him. And so I just sit there and I just watch. And that was the first time I ever heard anybody playing 5/4 or 7, and it scared me half to death. I went, no, I think I've reached my limit. No way I'm gonna learn this. You know, that was back in the days with Columbia Record Club and all of that.
Oh man,
that's how far back we go. You know, and that back 50, 57, 58. Oh man, it was. Then when I realized I had to digest that information. A few days, and I went, man, I wonder how we did that. What? And I back to the spoons and trying to. And my mother said, boy, if you don't, I kill you. But eventually, I got into music and art high school.
And that was located where?
When we went to music and art high school, it was from 1959, 58 until 1962.
Right, 62.
And then after that, I was working, man.
So now here you are. So you're taking lessons. You're studying.
Well, essence,
right.
I was just studying and taking lessons from anybody I could. This was in the days when you had not the equivalent of percussive art society stuff, but in the musicians union,
right.
Henry Adler's was there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's see, what else was there? There was no Sam Ash yet. Oh, Manny's.
Manny's was there.
And in 1959, I got my first drum set. That's where I met Mr. Rich. He dropped my snare drum on the stairs by accident, but it was a real enormous pleasure for him to drop my snare drum down the stairs. So much I didn't forget it. I didn't let him forget it either. But I met so many people, Louis Belson. Everyone just kept coming through New York, and I was at the union. My dad was a union member, so it was difficult for me to not.
Yeah.
You know.
See, the local 802 was a union in New York City. It still is.
Was?
Yes, still is.
Oh, thanks, man.
Right?
Man, you never know.
Your card's still good. And with that, all these players that came in town, I mean, think of the guys that were there. Max Roach was there. Papa Joe Jones was there. All the guys that were there.
Yeah. I ended up in a drum shop that was like Wonderland. Many times, sometimes I pass up a gig just to be at the shop. It's called the Frank Ippolito's Professional Percussion Center. So you walk in, it's on the second floor, you go upstairs to the third floor, and there's all this like dusty, dingy stuff there, and you're going, man, these fiber cases are awful, man. You should go downstairs. Hey, Frank, man, when are you going to throw this stuff out? Well, what's in it? Well, I just saw it looks like a Radio King slinger. Yeah, somebody left a Slingland drum set. Anybody using that? Al Duffy says, who was another very special person, visionary, says, don't touch it. Said, okay. Said, what's behind it? Another Lee Ludwig WFL bass drum, 20 inches. Don't touch that either. And it would go on like this. So you're not going to throw this stuff out? Yeah, we will. But when? I don't know. next thing you know, I'm just sort of moving around. I can't remember all the people who were there, but we would just be there from day to day, talking about drums. Duffy is like bang, 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 fixing this, fixing that. And out comes this bass drum pedal with a chain on it.
Yeah.
Go, wow, man, I've never seen anything like that. Oh yeah, it goes back to Chick's Soul set. You know, it's upstairs. You know, and I saw something like this, and I thought, well, I'll make another one. And then I told Papa Joe. He came inside and he looked at it, and he goes, he takes his newspaper, and he comes in and he goes, that's it. We need one of those. And that's how, you know, that's how bass drum pedals were made back in the day. And then, you people don't know anything about that. He said other words, but, and we just sit there and listen and go, oh boy. And it was that kind of atmosphere where you learned by the way your mentors, you know, would direct you, what you needed to do. If he had a pair of brushes in his hands, because you know they're not making them like they used to be. You know, the new Fig First look much better now, but I think they're ahead of their time. I'd rather stick with the Ludwigs that they have, you know, because yeah, the gauge and the wire is not long. You just hear all these different things and you go, now it doesn't make any sense. Maybe later it will.
Yeah.
You know, and it just would stay there. And it wasn't to be able to, I mean, on purpose to be able to pass it down to anyone as much as it was for my own purpose to understand that if I got into a specific situation where I did, either working with Mingus or with Junior Mance or somebody like that, or playing with a singer, you know, somebody, I don't know, and all of a sudden you go, okay, I understand why I need to approach the music in this particular way with this particular instrument or these particular sticks, how to draw the sound out, what they mean by that, what symbols to use in this particular situation. That is what that environment was really about. And it can't be, it's missed now today because, you know, it's not really the way the world turns anymore, but still, when you have environments like this, you try to make the best that you possibly can of it and bring those ideas back to the forefront.
It's kind of interesting, all those great players, and at that time, and I knew Frank Ippolito and Al Duffy, and I remember when they put that chain onto a Camco pedal. Yeah. And at that time, it was a leather strap that was used. Yeah. You know, now we have like a plastic nylon strap that they use, but they decided because of the leather strap, when it would get dry and it would crack, they then put this chain on. Mm-hmm. Well, this was really technology at a forward-thinking place. They put it on, they made it happen, and it really was incredible because, like you said, Papa Joe Jones, Philly Joe Jones, Elvin Jones, all these guys would come and walk in and out of the place and try it out. And
then one day, you could see everybody from a young Tony Williams come in to somebody, I don't know. It's just so many people. Yeah, yeah. Max, they would just show up. He said, I need a pair of sticks to do this. One pair of sticks. Yeah, yeah. $2.50, something like this, for a pair of sticks. Bang, you know. Yeah, where you working? Playing on I got a show. Or Grady Tate or somebody like this. A lot of studio players. Mel Lewis would saddle between Adler's and there. And actually, they're just pricing who had the better price. And it was pretty much all the same anywhere you went, you know.
And well, Henry Adams was had a little bit more of a school edge to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Those guys like Sean is teaching there, and Sonny Igo that were there, and
right. It was somebody else there. Charlie, was it Charlie?
Charlie Perry or
Not Charlie Perry. Was it Charlie Perry? Oh, Cal. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Darn it. But it was so much activity in New York at the time.
And it had so here you are now playing drums. So your first gig stepping in a professional world now. Where'd that start?
Well, after the military, because that's, you know, everything prior to that was like, yeah, you had an occasional dance, you played with James Brown, but that's not playing. You know, I mean, one gig.
Playing one gig with James Brown is not playing?
Not really.
I'll take that gig for one night.
Yeah, but you do understand what that is an experience. To really, for me, to play with someone, it's like to spend some real time.
Right.
You know, you come and you fill in, and you play with that person. Okay, good. I played with James Brown. So what? But if you go to, say, a project, say like Miles, let's say, and you, or a Junior Mance or Mingus, and you sit down and you have a few concerts with them. So you start to understand how to line yourself up musically with these people, what they really mean with every note. Because when you're playing music, it's a language, and it's spoken by each individual in their own dialect, through their instrument. It's not something that you are to take lightly as being, oh, hi, you know, and never see that person again. Right. Which, I mean, I played on a James Brown recording called White Night, and he didn't sing on it until after I finished playing. That was A&R 48th. So I really didn't play with him, you know. Right. I've watched and I enjoyed, of course, the performances, but it's not the same. Right. But when I sit down with Miles, and again, I was the drummer in the studio, except for one time where we were getting ready to record live with the Gil Evans Orchestra and Miles in Japan. Quite different. Right. All right. Now we're hitting it, and it's like, yeah, I understand. There's a tremendous difference between that.
When you got involved with the drumming aspect of it, and you started playing, you were the first to really kind of come up with this open-handed mentality where many drummers were crossing their hands to play. Okay. And they'd play in a cross-handed style. If you were a right-handed person, you'd put your right hand on the hi-hat, and your left hand played snare. You then reversed that. Now, you're a natural righty, okay? And as a natural righty, you then decided that you felt having your left hand on the hi-hat made more sense.
Reason is, when you sit down at the table, you're like, you go this way, you go this way, go this way. If you have everything here, your posture is much more in control. If you're like this, you're playing at a weaker aspect, and you're more asked to not play as effectively because you're here. So now you're going to lean this way. But what happens if you have your snare drum as your point of reference so that you can go that way? Okay, so that means you have to be ready at any point in time to start with either hand to play in the direction in which you want to go. And it's about being selective about which drum you are going to play, not the drums that are set up in a way so that you are forced to go that way because of how can I put it?
A restricting technique.
Well, it's right? All about custom. This is all a customary thing. Okay, drums are set up with the smallest drum up here and the lower drum down here. So customarily, you start this way. So this way, you play this way. But what happens if you do this? That's not customary. That's not the way it normally would go. So now you're opening up your mind to playing what you want to play, when you want to play it, in real time, because that's what you hear, not what somebody set you up to hear. Big difference.
Boy, when people saw you playing that way, and that was late 50s, early 60s, at that time, when they saw you playing that way, that had to be completely out of the box of anyone playing that way.
So my father says, I don't know if do you know Specs Powell?
Yeah, sure, Specs
Okay.
Powell. Wow.
We started to take a lesson with Specs. Yeah. So my dad said, "This is Mr. Powell. Say hello." "Hello, sir." Yeah. Okay. I want to give my student, my son, a lesson. Specs says, "Yeah, go ahead, play on the drums." And so of course, I started like this, conventional but left-handed. Yeah. And Specs says, "No, you don't play that way. You play the other way, right-handed." So I said, "Oh, you mean like this?" He says, "Yeah, so you do both." I said, "Yeah, but I like to play like this." He said, "No." I said, "But why?" My father said, he said, "No." So I said, "Okay." I played, but when he wasn't looking, I said, "I wonder why he said no." Because it feels so comfortable to play like this and then to switch over and play like this. And yeah, I can play like this. So if I were to just use these different stickings when I needed them, where would I be? And here I am.
But what's interesting, it's pretty amazing because that opened you up then to a whole different sense of voicing the instrument.
Correct.
Right? So with that now, when people saw you playing this way, you had to now take your weaker hand, which was your left hand,
Right.
and lift that to a higher level because you committed to a ride cymbal on your left, you lowered the hi-hat,
Right.
and that's where you were.
Yeah, so everything became more accessible because the key elements in my drum set at the time was my snare drum, my ride cymbal, and my hi-hat. Okay? I know I'm going to play these.
Yeah.
A lot. So why should I have this, and then my ride cymbal here?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of energy wasted, man. If I were to take that and put it over here and take this and put it over there, And then I started to get into this whole other thing about where do I put my drums?
Yeah.
But you were on that clinic.
Yeah, we did a tour together.
So we do this clinic, right? and they're screaming at me, and I think we were in St. Louis.
We had arrived late.
Yeah. And it was like not Lone Star, it's Texas, whatever it was. So next thing you know, I'm panicked. Hibbs is trying to help me, and he has to start first. He said, "They got a time limit, man. Come on, get it out." So I turn around. I'm like grabbing for something, and Joe Hibbs turns around and says to me, "Where you want this drum?" I didn't look. I said, "There." When I turned around, the drum he was talking about was a 15-inch rack tom. And that would normally go, if I were playing, there. So, but my back was turned, so I thought he meant, I had it all turned around. Next thing you know, it was here. And I went, ah, we have to start. And then I started to play, and I went, you know.
We laughed hysterically.
That's not a bad idea, actually. And the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I wonder if you put this here. So, okay, to take the 15, and the 13, the 12 was here already, so, no, take the 12, put it over here. The 13 here, put the 14 over here. The 12 is there. Okay, good. So that means, okay, the 6. Now we could take, put the 18 over. And I just started to fool around with placement of sounds. Not just to put the drums in different places to sort of vex me, but to get me to think, what sound do you really want to play here now, right now as we're playing? Do you really want to hear an 18 on this side or on that side or 15 on this side? Because it makes a difference. What you're listening to from one side of your head to the other is a big difference. Not to anybody else, but to you. And it projects a personality, and it shows your imagination as being first and foremost. What you're designing to present to those who listen to you is most important, especially yourself, first and foremost.
Absolutely. So we're on this clinic tour together, and I'm witnessing the conventional drum set be ripped apart out of the box in the most unusual way. Ride cymbal on the left side, hi-hat being lowered, 15-inch on the left side, this upside down. Billy has shifted things, doing it, and every day he's playing is fantastic. The audience is going crazy, and to be a part of witnessing this evolution of what you did really changed the modern sense of how we look at the drum set.
Little did I know. I was just trying things and said, well, the worst that can happen is that it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then I won't do it again, I mean, because the first time it's a mistake. You're an idiot if you have to do it, twice. The same. Why? You're wasting time now. But some things, sometimes it's you need to do it again to say, was that really true? I mean, let me leave this alone for a minute, but I'll try it again and see what happens, And a lot of, in many ways, it's very important to use your imagination. Never depend on only what you see, or that's too convenient. You see your mentors or the people whom you hold in high respect. They're playing a certain way. That's cool, but they did it already. So you can use them as a, how can I put it, as
a stepping stone.
A stepping stone, a model.
Yeah.
But then it's about to be, as far as I'm concerned, I put that in the back of my head. A great example, got me in trouble, so what else is new? I was in the Army. I was at Scope, the United States Naval School of Music, 1964, thereabouts. And I was waiting for orders to be shipped out either to NORAD or to the United States Army Field Band at Fort Meade, but no one could decide what the heck to do with me. But I understood. So I had a chance to teach some classes since they were short of teachers. And I decided to put together some music, write some drum parts out, and discuss certain technical aspects of playing in the rhythm section with the percussionists that were there. So it was a Friday afternoon, and I got a bunch of records, and I had my old General Electric record player, and I opened it up, and I went into the rehearsal room with the drum set with some Bobby Darin and Basie, Atomic Basie, and Buddy Rich, what was it, West Side Story. Yeah. And I took dictation and wrote out all the parts. And I wrote out the drum parts. And when it came to seeing Buddy years later play West Side Story, I was absolutely blown away by the way he played it as opposed to the way I imagined it. And the fact that both worked. Yeah. And I went, yeah. You can't be serious, man. What are you doing? And I went, but he's the guy that did it in the beginning. And this is how I imagined it. Hey, there must be something to this thing of just imagining. You don't have always, you can watch once or twice, and then after that, okay, you've seen it now. What do you really see here? What have you retained here? How can this work to your favor? That's the you that's going to play that part, not Buddy. Buddy already did it. Who are you? How are you going to, approach the same situation? And it's different patterns I'm playing. Everything is just, it's completely different scene, different sticking, completely out.
But it's funny because when I had heard you with Mahavishnu, mm-hmm. it really was hard to, what we heard on the recordings, mm-hmm. we couldn't really transcribe what you were doing because we didn't understand that concept of freedom that you gave yourself.
Right.
So we're trying to transcribe the stuff. Trying is the key word. What we transcribe, we're trying to figure this out by playing it in
right.
old mentality.
Right.
And finally, when I went to see you, and I said, "What is he doing?" And it made so much sense to open this kid up.
Yeah.
Almost the way somebody would compose something at a keyboard. You have the full keyboard in front of you, not just a part of it.
That's it. All the drums become a tone. Yeah. It's a scale.
Yeah.
And you're choosing the tones that you want to play in sequence or quarterly. Yeah. Hence, the quadrigrip thing for me, which is what Luce saw that I was leaning in that direction anyway, so he got me involved in that. But what I was really thinking about is that you tune the drums, tension them, if you want to call it that, as closely as possible to a note by understanding the makeup of the actual drum and what it will do in certain situations, what its power area, where it will sing best. And you use that in collaboration with a few other drums. Now you have an actual totally musical instrument.
But you went from this open-handed mentality
right.
to then to the quadrigrip,
yeah.
which is 2 sticks in each hand.
Yes.
So now you're hitting 2 drums and you're voicing it the way a mallet player or
right.
a keyboard player would play.
Right.
So it really became a keyboard.
Yes.
Through composition, than just a drum set.
Right, and so
that was huge.
And the objective is, again, rhythmatists play into the drum. What I'm choosing to do is to draw the sound from the drum, to get the drums to sing or to respond with a minimal amount of impact, so that they will sound, so that I can control the decay and the fall off of it
right.
in sequence or quarterly, if possible. So that's my approach, all based on this.
Right. And how was it when you were playing with Mahavishnu and Mclaughlin? That music was electric. You guys were really at a much higher intellectual, spiritual sense. It really was at a level of communication that was so inspiring that there was just this magic going on back and forth.
Call and response
Yeah.
is the general term. It's, say we're speaking together like we are now. We need elements that some are more dominant than others. One element that's very, very strong and important is the element of acceptance and silence. We need someone to listen, okay? But there's a difference between people listening silently and people going, with their eyes open, okay? So you get that feeling. That, again, the music never lies. The music will tell you the truth every second of every day, okay? So that part is cool. The other part is when we're talking, interaction, call, and response, okay? And so I'm responding and reacting to what you've asked. I'm telling you, and you're reacting. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's just like this, and sometimes it's completely catatonic, as it would appear, but it's all, we're feeling something together. When I played with Mahavishnu, what we had that was very special was that John, luckily for me, was very strongly studying Eastern Indian music, but the total musical aspect of it, okay, really was very helpful for me because I had to follow up. I wasn't interested at the time, and my loss, maybe not, to the degree that he was in the conical aspect, no. What I heard was based on my Latin influences, and the only way I could explain it was when people said, "How do you play these odd meters?" And I said, "But oddly enough, I just play it as 4/4 plus whatever's left over." And they go, "What?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's like, hey, that's the only way I could do it." But it's true, man. These guys is, come on, man. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's gonna happen again, So nothing's really changing unless you change the last little part of it. The other part's gonna stay the same. So you leave that there, and then the tempos would get faster. So this is the speed part of it was all based on what the band was going through. Not just the intensity level, but the volume level, which was, I think, is last. But the speed, it tended to implicate that it was intense, and it had a lot to do with the way Indian music is played. Indian music is played in such a way that where the tempos are not sustained. So many times it gets faster and faster and faster and faster. It's just the way it is. The music has evolved in a certain way in India where a lot of that stuff happens, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We used to, in the car when we were traveling, we used to sit down and try to see how quickly we could sing patterns that would be like 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you go through that, but instead of doing that, because we love beer, we used to go, "Hey, give me my beer, give me back my beer, give me my beer, give me back my beer, hey, give me my beer, give me back my beer, give me back my beer, hit me my," and well, it worked anyway for us. Yeah, I never did win the Guinness, but there we are.
So here you are playing in 1908, and I'm trying to count in 1908. I could have counted in 4.
Why not?
Absolutely. That makes total sense.
Well, it's just 4 and 3 left over. Yeah. In essence, or 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And if you did it that way, but the whole idea was that the phrase would be more important than what the numbers were.
Right.
And the phrase would always be fundamentally the same. So it gave you an opportunity to alter that pattern in an effective and musical way.
Right.
not just for the sake of changing the numbers,
Right.
but you know, if you're I mean, so all of a sudden, I start to envision Elvin or Max doing but the last two notes would always be fundamentally the same.
If I had to ask you to name 3 or 4 drummers specifically that were really influential to you in your growing up,
Right.
cumulative years, who would
Right.
you say? Who would you say?
Art Blakey,
Wow.
okay. Elvin Jones.
Yeah.
I can't mention 3. I got to mention more.
Go
Elvin
for it.
Jones,
Yeah.
Max Roach, Mel Lewis,
Wow.
Rich.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these are all, you will hear them in my playing. Tony Williams,
Yeah.
you will hear him in my playing. Roy Haynes. I mean, it just goes on like this.
Yeah.
And as I keep hearing people like Charlie Persip, you know,
Wow,
it just goes on like this, you know, and you go, or Grady Tate, maybe people that some of us, you know, most people don't even know except in the studio, and you go, how can I not? Because those guys got me going.
Well, Grady, aside from being a phenomenal drummer, was a great singer. Yeah, he really sang well.
Phrasing.
Yeah.
But he sings the way he plays.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see? And that's the beauty of it all. That's why it's very, it's beyond insulting, but it's not, that's not even the word. It's such a shame that many people don't realize that when we play the musical instrument called the drums, it's actually only the second musical instrument ever devised in the world. The first one's this.
Yeah, voice.
And yet, why be called the band and the drummer? You know, and not be included in that environment as part of the actual team, you know. As per experienced in the current Academy Award situation, you know, where you have such wonderful music only played on drums for a movie, and it doesn't qualify for an award.
Yeah, right?
That's kind of a shame. They missed the boat.
Right?
Yeah. But there we are.
So highlights of artists you perform with. Just give me a real fast overview of you mentioned Miles and guys. Who would you say is up there that really had an impact on you, that really helped mold who we know as Billy Cobham now?
Well, aside from Miles, I'd say John Mclaughlin had helped me on a couple of issues. One was pacing myself. Okay. I can't remember the name of the club down in the village. We played there. The opening act was champion Jack Dupree and Big Mama Thornton.
Oh, man.
No, we were the opening act for them. And we were playing in the club that was smaller than the baked potato. You know how
it's
right.
tiny.
Right?
Tiny.
And that was man, Cafe Wa.
Cafe Wa.
Right? This village, you know,
God.
this is like, whoo.
Long time ago.
We go, man. So we're there, we're setting up and all of this, and I'm going through a lot of problems just trying to understand how to pace myself through a 3-hour show. And I said to John, I said, man, you know, how do you play and sustain your level of intensity for so long? And he says, you just have to play as if you're breathing, the way you breathe. The way you breathe should be natural, as if you were having a conversation. You play your instrument as if you were using it as a tool to converse with someone else.
Right.
And so when you speak with someone else, sometimes it gets intense, and so you use more air or you raise your voice, but you still take a breath.
Right.
And what I was doing was that I was always holding the air in. So I was like, and I was playing as many notes as I possibly could per bar, and then almost dying in the process. So as soon as I started to do that, I found that my level of proficiency raised because I had better control over it. And so that was one thing. With Dr. Billy Taylor, in trio, I learned to really find a way to enhance what he does, what he plays.
And Billy Taylor was a piano player.
Pianist,
He was
yes.
a phenomenal piano player. That was.
Yes, and that took me into work with on a very limited basis with Herbie Hancock and Keith Jarrett and people like this in recording studio situations. I was never so. I mean, I feel very, very fortunate to have been able to share experiences with those guys. Ron Carter is another person who has helped me quite a bit, just in terms of learning to be independent, to think independently, yet as part of the team. That's a very, very strange combination of terms, because there's a fine line. If you hear something and that you really believe in, you have to know how to play it in such a way that's musical and not tip the balance of the intensity levels or whatever else that may be in play at the time. You must be able to follow your own line of thought. For instance, Ron Carter and I play in a trio called Heroes. That's actually, the leader is technically a saxophonist by the name of Donald Harrison. He's a great alto saxophone player. He's maybe easily 20, 30 years our junior. And we love him for it, because he just wants us to play with him. So we play with him. Okay. But Ron is Ron. Yeah. And Ron will do some things that are like, you go, hello? Why? You know, why now? And it's all, he knows exactly where he is. He is a chordal and melodic voice in the of consistency in the trio. It's only bass, drum set, and saxophone. Okay? And it makes it so unique. It's because Donald has to really listen to where Ron is going. Yeah. And Donald has to gear up. He has to think, okay, he's doing this. Okay, I can do this. I can treat the chord in this way. I can play these notes based on what Ron is playing. Yeah. And I have to stop and think about, if he's playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden he goes, ba, 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 or ba, 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 ba. Out of the blue, do I stay on my own line of thought, or do I go with him? Yeah. Which is, at the point in time, is more effective to help make the band face, keep the band face and make a musical statement. That, to me, is what it's all about. You win some, you lose some, but you have to try. And that, to me, is music as it would be life.
Well, but that experimental stage, Elvin liked that too. He played with bass and sax. Yes, yes. And that must be a feeling of you kind of don't know where you're going, but you're going there.
Well, yeah, you can't, and you cannot take the position of, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. You just play, and it starts to evolve. And if the musicians whom you are working with are secure in what they're doing, right, you will work together, and you will cement a presentation that I call the band face. It's a face that's only representative of the individuals who are playing together at the time.
At that time. As
soon as somebody else comes in, it changes. It's not necessarily bad or good. It's just not going to be the same three people.
Right.
You know, so if you take it from that position, or even a duet, and you go from, because I played with Ron with just drums and bass, and with melody and everything like this, and we're grooving. But we have to really synchronize with each other, not just rhythmically, but in terms of conception, right, how we view working together, how we play and move through the music together. As soon as you add more players, things get more stable, to the point where you get to playing with a big band. Like, I've got recording with 19-piece big band, and I can only do certain things, right, because that band has to be, everyone has to be locked in as to exactly what's going to happen next. And it's like running a corporation, you know, really. It has a lot of moving parts. So you have to make sure everything is oiled and greased and is to the extent of where you want to go. Otherwise, you're going to lose.
Where did composition come in? Because you've composed so much stuff.
Yeah.
Where did that happen? I remember on our tours that we would do, many times we would do like 27 cities in 28 days.
Right.
And you always had a keyboard, and this is going back years ago.
Right,
You
yeah.
had a keyboard in your hotel room every day. You'd open it up, you'd take it out, and you'd have some ideas.
Yes.
And by the end of that tour, you had several songs that you really kind of were working on.
Yes.
Where did your composition come from?
It started with a group called the New York Jazz Sextet, and the fact that I felt that percussionists and drummers generally were getting a bad rap as being just beaters. Okay, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that, we couldn't compose, we couldn't, and I didn't go, oh yeah, not, but my body language did. So what I did was just grab and start to write and to learn. And for me, first it was fun. I just wanted to be able to play in a band and contribute to the band. When other musicians I would say, I have a couple of tunes, and they look at me like, yeah, sure, right. And I go, okay. And I said, well, I'd like to. And they would go, yeah, uh-huh. But no one really took me seriously. No one took me seriously. That's why you don't hear any Billy Cobham compositions with Mahavishnu. Okay? As soon as that first band was dissolved, I had a hit record. And it was with 2 fingers on the piano that I put all the material together. Okay? It was because I endured. Rome, you have to understand, as in anything else, Rome is not built in a day. You will make mistakes, but as you persevere, eventually the ugly duckling starts to become the swan. Okay? And I haven't looked back since. And it's just something now that's a habit. I hear something, I might be whistling a tune. One of the biggest things with me is that I rarely ever turn on the radio in the car because I'm always singing something in my head that I never heard before. Because that's what I do. And as soon as I get home, it might stay with me or it may not. But what stays with me, I start to write it. And now I don't even use a keyboard, I just write it.
This last recording, Billy Cobham, the Tales from the Skeleton Coast. Just tell us about this here. Where'd this come about from?
Okay. What happened there was the Skeleton Coast exists. It's in Namibia. It's in the northwestern part of Namibia, just south of Angola. I have 4 daughters, and the second oldest one was working in the Peace Corps there. And so I went there and ambled off and was in the Toshapan for a while and near Botswana, and we traveled on over and started just checking out what was happening. I was so impressed. I'd never seen grasshoppers, for lack of a better term, so big. I mean, like this, a grasshopper. And I mean, I was like amazed. I have pictures of this thing.
And it looked like a grasshopper?
It is a grasshopper, and it
It
flies.
wasn't a dog?
No.
It was a grasshopper.
It was green. Dogs ain't green. Maybe in the land of the Grinch. But anyway, so what happened next is that I started to really get involved in, man, I'd like to do something with this. That was 1994. And nothing ever came to be. So I didn't hear any material. I just didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. But it was still back here. And then finally, I started to hear something in 2010, 2011. Things started to open up, and I started to write music that I felt best represented those experiences in what was then southwestern Africa.
Wow.
Okay, and I also wanted to give a visual impression of how this place kind of looked, and I couldn't. So I couldn't get back there. I wanted to get into a hot air balloon and use a 360-degree panoramic camera and stay under it and do all of that, and I couldn't make it. So I had to come up with some alternative ideas. So the front shot is of Eastbourne, and not the Skeleton Coast, this is here. This is really Eastbourne and outside of London, in the south side, on the channel. But the back shots is where I live. It's Coronado in Panama. And this is the best, that's as close as I can come. So, I do my own work that way. And I try to tie things in visually to what I write sonically.
Interesting. Interesting. Let's talk about the business side. I mean, you've got many drum books out. You've got the recordings that you've done. In the business side, how were you able to balance this high-level artistic expression and the business sense of keeping it all going?
By being observant, by being analytical, by taking a step or two or three or four back before I make a move, to try to and make inquiries if at all possible, of professionals whom I have respect for. Sometimes my peers, in terms of what they're going through, how they dealt with it. But generally speaking, pulling all of that together and saying, okay, now what do I do next? And I mean, I have to tell you, the payment is very high. If not for specialists who have come online since I started, like Paul or my guy, Tony Berman, there are not too many other people out there that I've found who are able to really fully understand and appreciate this aspect of what we do on a day-to-day basis, unfortunately for us. And so we continue to make mistakes. The most important thing is that you do not forget what you did. It's not going to always be the same, but there'll be some kind of a spin-off of that coming down the road, and you go, I remember this now. Okay, but what's different about this? So you keep, it's the same thing about playing, as in playing any of your instruments. You must sustain and pay attention to all aspects of your business. And this is your business. If you have a good product, the chances are you're going to do very, very well. You're going to find, as I found, like the music business maybe 20, 25 years ago, can't be even that much, 15 years ago, you get a record and you say, okay, I'd like to have this record distributed by XYZ company. Okay, that company says, okay, the best I can do is give you 5% of wholesale or something, and you want to have this, as an artist, you want to have this record out. 5% of wholesale, man, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. Oh, take it or leave it, right? Okay. You can always, as I found out, who was the first one? It was, I can't remember his name now. But there was an artist David Bowie, was the first person that came up. He decided, okay, I'm going to do this on the internet. That goes back to 1990, man. And Barnes & Noble said, and we'll blacklist you all over. You'll never sell a record in our stores. So he did it anyway. And 350,000 units later, and him collecting everything.
Absolutely. What a bigger percentage of that. And we talked about that, Paul, before. Yeah. Wow.
And he had a predecessor. They're called the Grateful Dead. Okay? And again, there was a lot of protests. You can't do this. You can't do this. And they did it. And they're a great model, man.
You have always stayed true to form, Billy. You've always stayed, on path and consistent to who Billy Cobham is. That really has been an amazing thing to see for as long as I've known you, which has been incredibly inspiring. What do you say to the next generation? As we begin to wind this to a point of, it's now about this next generation to carry the torch, to continue on this path, to stand on the shoulders of greatness, giants like yourself. Mm-hmm. What is it that you can deliver to that next generation?
Be observant. Observance is very, very important now more than ever. Actually, it's just on the surface more. It's come forward. So watch what's going on. Learn from what's happening in the world. There are many things that are happening that you would not think would be directly affecting what you're doing or what you're going to do, but they are. Be observant of current events in the news, where things are at, where you're going to work, why you're going to work there, what's happening in places that you thought you would be working in, but now there's no work. Why is that? There's an economic side of things. Learn about that as much as you possibly can. Use that knowledge to your advantage. If you can do that, you'll always work.
We here at the sessions really allow the topic to be discussed about the pursuit of excellence and you developing your own skills and you really believing in your own passion and you really following the path that you probably were put on this earth for. Billy, you clearly have followed that path. You stayed true to who you are. You continue to do it. You inspire now equally as much as you inspired when I first heard you. So you have had this pace, this momentum, this force that has been positive. It has been inspiring. It has been constantly motivating. It is really a power and a force that is at the highest spiritual level that you have given us in music and in love at every single note you have played. For that, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Billy Cobham.
Thank you very much.